This edition of Mac Voices is sponsored by Smile, the makers of world-class software like PDF Pen for Mac, PDF Pen Pro for Mac, PDF Pen for iPhone and iPad, PDF Pen Scan Plus for iPhone and iPad, Text Expander for Mac, and Text Expander for iPhone and iPad. Learn more about all their great products at smilesoftware.com. Welcome to Mac Voices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, we haven't done a MacJury in a while, and it's time to get back on the horse. It seems like it's been a very busy few months with conferences and travel and all kind of things. But I definitely want to get some of the panel shows going again. I also want to let you know that this is another one of our little experiments. We're trying out some alternative options for recording both audio and video. And so if this looks a little different, if it sounds a little different, that's why. And so if you notice it to any significant degree and you have a feeling about it, please let me know at chuck@macvoices.com whether you liked it or didn't like it or what annoyed you or what you liked about it. So we're going to talk about the iPhone. We're all going to almost certainly have a decision to make here in the next few weeks about whether we want to upgrade to the next iteration of the iPhone. And that's not based on rumors, that's just based on history. This is about the time of year that Apple releases a new iPhone, or at least announces a new iPhone, depending on shipping dates. So I thought it'd be interesting to ask some of our panel members what they want in a new iPhone. Maybe not necessarily what they expect, but what they want. What would make them do an upgrade or upgrade from whatever they have now to the latest and greatest when it arrives. So that's what we're going to be talking about. So let's find out who's here. First up, Ms. Shelly Brisbin. Shelly, it's been way too long since we've talked to you.
It has. Hi, Chuck. It's great to be here.
Yeah, what happened? How did this happen?
What happened? I don't know, Chuck. You know where I live. Well, yeah. So I'm always happy to come and be part of the MacJury. It's so much fun.
Well, it is indeed. It is indeed. Someone else we haven't talked to for a ridiculously long time, Mr. Rob Walsh. Rob, welcome back.
Great to see you video-wise. We see each other more in live events than we do online.
Yeah, and that's my fault. And we gotta fix that. We gotta fix that. And you have such a nice bright green background, Rob.
I stole my kid's video studio because this time of day the sun is coming right through the windows of my house, and it would not have looked good.
So your son has a video studio, but you don't.
I do not. I do audio. My kids do video. Isn't that the way it is, right?
Yeah.
His way of rebelling.
Yeah,
I'm in their studio.
I never thought of it as rebelling. I thought of it as just being more advanced than any of us.
Yeah.
Well, guys, you heard the intros, and you know why we're here to talk. We may have, by the way, folks, we may have one more panel member join us. His schedule was a little iffy, so if he shows up, great, and if not, that's okay too. So, Shelly, I'm going to start with you and ask you, what do you want to see in a new iPhone?
Well, I guess the most obvious thing is that I'd like to see some of the iPhone 10 features move down to the lower part of the phone stratosphere, so to speak. And I'm almost sure that will happen, at least to some extent. Face ID, particularly, and an OLED screen. The issue with OLED, typically, and maybe Face ID to some extent, it might be cost. And I'm one of those value shoppers, or I try to be. But I guess that's where I would start. Is I would really, I don't know if you want to go through a litany now, Chuck, or if you want to go back and forth, but that's a good thing to chew on. Let's move some of those great iPhone 10 features down to for those of us who don't always buy the top of the line. We'd like some of the fun features too, please.
Okay, good choice. Rob, how about maybe this is a good way to do it. We'll just.
I'm going to actually be exactly the opposite of Shelly. I'm going to say I want them to take the top of the line iPhone 10 features and move them up to the plus size. I mean, you look, the iPhone 10 is really an advanced version of the iPhone 7, right? If you take it and you turn it sideways, it doesn't act like the iPhone 7 Plus. It acts like the iPhone 7. I want to see if you take the 7 Plus or now the 8 Plus and give the iPhone 10 features to it and give me a bigger screen that when I turn it and rotate it 90 degrees, it actually goes in split screen mode and actually acts more like a Plus phone.
Okay, so I will start this part. I have an iPhone 10. Rob, what are you using now as your daily driver?
The iPhone 10.
The iPhone 10. Shall we?
I've got an iPhone 8. I always say that when I bought my iPhone on the when it was very new, I still bought the third most exciting phone that Apple had to offer because I'm a cheapskate.
Well, I think it's really interesting now we're a year later, or almost a year later. The iPhone 10 was originally postured as sort of an experiment, to put some of the advanced technology in and see what people thought of it. And something happened very quickly. It seemed to became the flagship phone. It became the one that everybody wanted. And no offense, Shelly, obviously, but having an iPhone 8 was just, you weren't at the top of the heap anymore. And I don't know. At first it started out like a beta thing, and then it became, that was the standard.
Well, I think although to be fair, you have to realize that those of us who are either in the business or in the hobbyist business of evaluating these phones, most people are going to find a reason and a justification for buying the highest end phone, whatever that was. And I was not in that position. I was doing a lot of other things that didn't have to do with making my money writing about or talking about the iPhone. I did it in my spare time. And I just made a personal decision that I wasn't going to go for the top of the line. And I'm sort of I always start with new technology kind of in the middle ranks. I kind of like to do that. And I feel like, most of the people that you and I know probably do have an iPhone 10, and they may also be people who are on a yearly upgrade cycle. And that's just going to affect the choices people make. I know plenty of people who have iPhone 6 models. So, I just have a wide range of acquaintances.
Yeah.
And there's quite a few people that have iPhone SE.
Yes. I'm married to one of them, in fact.
Yeah. My wife wants the iPhone SE too, but she doesn't want any of the iPhone 10 features. She wants the home button. She doesn't want the home button to go away. So she's one that doesn't like the fact there's no home button.
I feel like whether it's the home button or any number of other things, I think the demise or the rumored demise of the 4-inch phone would be really unfortunate. And that is something else I would like to see as a continuation through an SE2. Something basically, if you took the existing SE and put a faster processor in it, I think that would be a great phone. And I feel like there are a lot of people. I really do know people who with even 5Ss and 6s and who are not on a yearly upgrade schedule. And I would like to be able to tell them the SE or the SE2 is a viable phone for you to get and still maintain super portability in your pocket or purse and also have a somewhat lower cost. So I would really like to see, I feel like when the SE came out, Apple was surprised by how well it did, but then they kind of sat on it for a while, hoping it would go away. And maybe that's what's happening now.
We're over 2 years without an upgrade on it, so it's well overdue.
Mm-hmm.
Do we need a plus-size iPhone 10, or would that be another iteration, whatever it is, iPhone 10, 1, or 11, or whatever?
10S Plus.
10S Plus.
XS Plus is how you
XS Plus.
No, but sadly, the iPhone 10 upgrade this year is likely to be called the 10S, and that's going to be so many jokes about that. And then you're going to have the 10S Plus. So I think you're going to wind up with an iPhone 9, a 10S, and a 10S Plus, which are just horrible naming.
Yeah.
So you don't think there'll be a 9 Plus?
No, I think the 9 is going to be the LCD between the 10S and the 10S Plus. So I think you're going to get the 10S Plus or 10S, which will be the newer upgrade of the processor, but basically the same as the 10. And then you're going to get the 10S Plus, whatever you want to call it, which is going to be a bigger version of the 8 Plus, but with no home button, but what we're used to seeing for the 10. That was the rumors pretty much back in December. Those rumors came out there was going to be 3 versions, 2 with the OLED displays and 1 with an LCD display in the middle of them. And those rumors haven't gone away the whole year.
Which is as good a reason as any for Apple to, do something different. It
Sure.
seems sometimes.
Let's defy the rumors. They do that occasionally. The rumors are usually not entirely wrong, but every once in a while there's something that they do that I wonder whether they do it to spite those who take the rumors as gospel.
Yeah, but the last few years, the rumor mill's been pretty much dead on. There hasn't been anything shocking in the last couple Apple events.
Which is an interesting situation to be in, because then we all write, oh, the Apple event was boring. Well, it's because we believed all the rumors that were out for 6 months beforehand. That's why we were bored.
Well, and I get so angry with the rumor mongers because, right or not, when they're not right, they never are not right on the low end. They're always not right on the really high end. Mm-hmm. And then there's all this disappointment. Oh, Apple didn't meet everyone's expectations of, having a 6 terabyte phone or something. It's, of course not.
What somebody does is they take a spreadsheet and they take the best feature of every individual Android phone and they put them all in a spreadsheet and say, well, this is the best feature of these 100 phones. Now, why can't we get all of these in one single iPhone? And that's what they try to compare. It's like they try to take the aggregate and try to compare it into one iPhone. And it's like no single Android phone does all of that. Why would you expect any single iPhone to do all of that? So, yeah, there'll always be disappointment. No matter what Tim Cook announces on September 12th, which was my guess for when the event will be, people will be disappointed.
Yeah. So do you think, both of you think we at this point need 3 sizes of iPhones?
Well, it'll be 4. I think we're going to wind up, we have 4 right now, right? We've got the 8, the 8 Plus, the
You're
10,
right.
and the SE.
Yeah, you'll still have the trailing 8s, even if they got rid of the SE, or just, there's always 1 or 2 or even 3 sometimes models that are back catalog that they keep for a year or so. And if that holds true, then some version of the 8 or the 8 Plus ought to stay around.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you go by tradition, we should have the 7 and the 7 Plus, the 8 and the 8 Plus.
Yeah.
And then the 210. So, and then the SE. So that's, if we go by tradition, that's what should be the available items for sale come October.
You're right. I'm sorry. I tend to forget about the SE. I'm glad you guys are so intent on it because I tend to forget about it.
I think the SE is a great phone. I mean,
agree.
I know a lot of people that love it. Yeah.
I just got my mom one. It's interesting because she's older, and I thought she would surely like a Plus. And so I had access to a 7 Plus, and I was going to give it to her. I was very excited. I got her a jitterbug phone that didn't work for her. So I said, well, let's get you a really big iPhone. And her issue was that she finds it difficult to hold the phone, even though she has macular degeneration, and even though the screen is bigger on a Plus phone. Physically holding and manipulating the phone and sending texts and like that, for her, the SE is the perfect size. And so that's what she's using right now. And I think there are a lot of people, whether that's not a specific use case that everybody's going to have, but there are a lot of people, whether it's Rob's wife or my husband or the people I know at work that find the SE a comfortable size and like to put it in a pocket or purse,
And my wife doesn't have to worry about the kids stealing her phone to go play Fortnite.
That's the reason right there. She gets
there's the answer. Get an arcade phone or a smaller phone where the kids really want to use it.
Oh my God!
No, I meant in general, not.
I know, Chuck.
As part of this discussion, but just get a phone that the kids don't want to play with, and then they'll leave it alone.
Mm-hmm.
I have a Razor.
A StarTAC.
Ooh,
StarTAC.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, my wife, before she had the SE, was on a BlackBerry.
Oh, wow.
So that's a huge improvement right there.
Yeah, that's how recent she was. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So how about I'm sorry, one of you said it and I don't remember who. The Touch ID thing that you or whoever doesn't want a Face ID.
My wife doesn't want it. Yeah, she wants the home button. It's more about the home button. She wants the home button, and she doesn't like my iPhone 10 very much happily. My youngest son, because he knows now he gets the 10. And in matter of fact, I think he's partially convinced her that she doesn't like it so that he can get the 10 and that she won't get it. But yeah, she's not a fan of the iPhone 10. She's used my phone a few times and she says it's not her thing.
Now, but since she's using your phone though, it doesn't recognize her, right?
Well, yeah, that I have to unlock it for her. But just the fact when I unlock it, there's no home button. She doesn't like that. So once it's unlocked, she doesn't like it without the home button.
Oh, okay. Shelly, how about you? Is the Face ID something that you like, or do you prefer the home button?
I don't have a preference, really. I mean, the chances of my getting a phone are high this year, and I would not I would not choose a phone because it had Face ID, and it's kind of fun, but it's not a reason that I would upgrade. I would upgrade for a display. I would upgrade for battery. I would upgrade for faster processor, but I don't think I would. But like I say, I feel like if I upgrade, I'm going to get Face ID in the bargain, and missing the home button. It's just a matter of getting used to gestures, and I've spent time with the iPhone 10, and I've had to write up gestures for the book and stuff like that. So I feel like I'm ready for it, and especially with the iPad moving toward iPhone 10 like gestures, it's where we're going anyway. So I'm not going to be nostalgic for the home button.
I'm always curious. I understand no matter which way they go, there's a trade-off, because there are definitely times that it's great to be able to reach over and touch the home button and have it unlock. And then there are other times that the Face ID is super convenient. And I have to say, at least for me, the Face ID has not slowed things down at all. So it's only if there's a situation where it's inconvenient for me to actually look at the phone to unlock it, that the Touch ID would be preferable. But
I feel like the issue that I can think of in my own life, and it's less me than my family members, is sharing a phone. Not sharing one all of the time, but here, use my phone for blah 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 to respond to somebody for a text about where you are. So I have to unlock it and hand it to somebody, as opposed to saying, because we've done the thing where we've put, my husband and I have our fingerprints on each other's phone, and I have my fingerprint on my mom's phone and that sort of thing. So, that's a nice feature, and I can imagine situations in which the kid runs up and goes, Mommy, please unlock your phone. I must play Fortnite right now because I don't have a 10.
Well, once they go to a 10S Plus or whatever it's going to be called, then you're really looking at a situation where kids are going to be playing Fortnite on it, because you get to that bigger screen, that'll be a really killer Fortnite machine.
Yeah. So our third panelist has just joined us, Mr. Peter Cohen. Peter, welcome.
Nice to see you guys.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So we're going to let you play a little catch up. We're talking about what we want in the next iPhone, not necessarily what we expect, but what we want. What do you want in the next iPhone?
Lower price for all the other iPhones. I'm happy to let Apple have its day with a flagship phone like it did with the iPhone 10 last year, right? But I want further democratization for the iPhone. I want more people to be able to get the iPhone in more places. I like to see the trickle-down effect that we see every year, right? Where Apple takes its latest model and maybe eliminates a few of the options and sets it at a lower price. I'd like to see Apple continue to do that. I know that Apple is a premium smartphone vendor and is always going to be focused on that segment of the market because that's where all the profit is. But I do like the fact that you can spend a couple $100 and actually get a decent phone, a decent iPhone. And I like the fact that that there is that distribution. So I am looking forward to it this year as well. In fact, I've advocated to a few people who are thinking about upgrading their phones to just hold off until September. And I'm like, that same phone that you're ready to drop all that money on right now, you might be able to get for maybe $100 less or something if you can wait another 4 or 6 weeks. So we'll see if I'm right. In terms of features, you know what? None of the iPhone 10 stuff really grabbed me last year. I really don't care about Face ID that much. I don't really think it's that much of a game changer, at least not for me anyway. So I am really curious to see what kind of rabbit Apple can pull out of its hat that will make us that excited this year, because 2017 was kind of hit or miss with me, and I'm not sure what Apple can do to make me want to jump on a new iPhone right now.
Smile, the makers of world-class software, are sponsoring this edition of MacVoices. Smile makes one of the premier PDF utilities with PDF Pen and PDF Pen Pro. You use PDFs, I use PDFs. Everybody uses PDFs, so having a utility that lets you do more with your PDFs just makes sense. And of all the PDF utilities, PDF Pen makes the most sense. The folks at Smile have been out there making PDF editing and manipulation easier and more approachable than anyone else. So what do I mean by editing and manipulation? Just that. If you thought you couldn't do anything with PDFs other than read them, you haven't met PDF Pen. With PDF Pen, you can not only edit, but also mark up and annotate PDFs. If the PDF came out of a scanner, you can run optical character recognition to turn it into editable text. And that's just the beginning. Need to redact something so that it absolutely can't be read? PDF Pen can do that. Need to password protect a PDF? PDF Pen can do that. Need to add or remove an image? Need to add, delete, combine, or even number pages? You can even add audio notes and attachments. If that isn't enough, step up to PDF Pen Pro to be able to create and edit forms in PDFs, create and edit tables of contents, and even turn full websites into PDFs for offline review. And of course, because it's Smile, there's a version of PDF Pen for iPhone and iPad as well, so that you can sync PDFs back and forth and still have powerful editing and annotating tools available on your iOS device. There are a host more features that might solve even more PDF problems for you. So go right now to smilesoftware.com, take a look at the full feature chart, and download a free demo version and try it out for yourself. Find out how convenient and useful having full access to your PDFs is, and then buy straight from Smile. And don't forget PDF Pen for iPhone and iPad, available on the App Store. That's PDF Pen and PDF Pen Pro at smilesoftware.com. More world-class productivity tools from Smile. Thanks to Smile for their ongoing support of MacVoices. So this is something we were discussing just a little bit, but you kind of made me think about it differently, Peter. You're saying you want a lower price point for the phone. We were talking about how many different models of phones will be available. And that seems to be the way Apple has addressed the lower price points, is just take older phones, drop them in price, and let them still be available.
Right. I think you're going to see the iPhone 7. It'll be at $450, $449 on the low end. You'll see the SE2 at $349. I think that's, just like now. The low price is $349. The high price is going to be $1,149.
If Robert's right about the SE2 and $349, I think that is a big deal. A big deal for a lot of people. A lot of people like the smaller form factor phones still. Look, I'm a size queen. I admit it. I've got my plus size phone, and I'll never go back to anything smaller than a surfboard. But a lot of people love the smaller size, and especially love the lower expense of the SE. So an SE2 would be fantastic to see. And $350. I mean, $350 for an iPhone. Come on, that's like junk money.
The other thing about democratization is that with the older models being on the price list, and just frankly so many of them floating around as people upgrade, a lot of the democratization comes when people get special deals from their carriers. They're from different carriers have offered, buy one, get one at a lesser price. And I know a lot of people, and my brother-in-law is sort of a carrier shopper, and that's how he and his family of a wife and 4 kids switch phones constantly, but they always have an iPhone. And if you don't care which phone you have, but you want an iPhone, you can actually get pretty good deals if you decide that you want to shop between Sprint and T-Mobile and AT&T, and especially now with phone number portability. And it's a world I don't really participate in, and I like the choice not to have to do that. But just the sheer track record of iPhones and the fact that, generally speaking, even a 2 or 3 year old iPhone, or an iPhone that is still in the line that was introduced 2 or 3 years ago, is still a pretty good deal and still runs the operating system pretty well, means that a surprising number of people are actually able to get phones for less than the retail price. And I only want to see that continue. I like the idea that Apple has this long trailing line of models that they're still available.
I think it's interesting. If my family is any indication, my wife and I have 3 kids, 3 adult kids. My youngest is 18, my oldest is 23. But for a very long time, it's been tradition that the phones get passed down to whoever needs them the least. And I think a lot of families are in similar boats. People who are trying to stretch budgets, technology budgets. It's when you're talking about capital outlay for phones, you're talking about a lot of money. And Shelly, you're absolutely right. I was just looking at my carrier the other day, has a BOGO deal, a buy one get one free deal on iPhone 8, and I'm like, wow, that's really tempting. It'd be nice. I'm still rocking a 6. My wife's still rocking a 6. These are 4-year-old phones this year. The fact that they're still working is amazing. I think the oldest phone that we've got in our house right now is still a 5S. One of our kids is still using a 5S. So every time there's a new upgrade cycle, it's a new opportunity for somebody at the top of the food chain economically to upgrade and then to pass their old kit down to somebody else. And that's how we keep stuff running for 5 years in this house.
Peter, you said something interesting there, that you can't believe these, something to the effect that these can't believe these phones are still working after that many years. Mm-hmm. I would be kind of disappointed if I had a piece of hardware that didn't work after 4 years. Now,
yeah, that's because you're an Apple user.
Well, yeah.
Go buy a Samsung or an LG and see how long that piece is going to last you.
All right.
Seriously,
my wife still uses her original iPod. I'm talking the original iPod.
With a spinning disc and everything?
The spinning disc. She still has it. And still works. No, we're going back to 2001. So, yeah, Christmas 2001.
Sweet. So the actual click wheel one. Nice.
Yeah. Someone said, why do you let her use it? Do you know how much that's worth? I'm like, she likes it. She's got her Joyce Meyer on there. She listens to it.
There you go.
So, well, and that may be a fair point. Maybe the rest of the world is used to borderline disposable phones, and we pass them down or pass them sideways or pass them out, and they still get used. Because if I'm a little surprised at myself that Apple so far has been able to pull out, I think, every year except one, when I skipped an upgrade, there's always a feature that is enough that I want it. It was not emojis last year. It was the camera, which is another feature that nobody has mentioned here as wanting to see an upgrade or make it more desirable.
Can I be honest with you, Chuck? The reason why I'm not really that excited about a new camera is because Apple ain't giving me what I want in cameras. I mean, Apple's done some beautiful stuff. Don't get me wrong, but the portrait mode and I forget what it calls the flash that adapts to the light. It's True whatever.
True Tone.
True Tone. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, that's been a big feature of the Pluses over the years, right? Is that they have a better camera than the base model, but it's not. I don't care. I'm still not getting the shots that I want out of an iPhone camera. If I'm serious about taking photos, I'm still reaching for my DSLR.
Shelly, camera important to you?
Yeah. Not really, in the sense that I don't do photographic art by any means with the camera on my phone. I mean, what I do, to be really honest, most of the pictures that I take with my phone are, like this morning, I was capturing a live event with some political candidates for my job. And because I'm the web editor, I get to decide that the phone pictures I take are perfectly fine. Thank you, for my website that I run. And I don't have super high expectations. And again, part of that is my value proposition there. I'm not really looking for a phone camera to bowl me over. If a phone camera is going to bowl over super expert photographers or people who have really high expectations of a camera, it's probably going to add cost to the phone that I don't particularly care to pay. I mean, I like to take pictures with my phone, but I don't do so in a professional context. We have a DSLR. If we go on vacation and want to take scenery, that's probably the camera we're going to use. In fact, in my family, because we have a DSLR and two phones, it's kind of nice to have that option and use the DSLR and then also have a backup to take phone pictures that are more candid and that sort of thing. And so I guess I still think a few years behind in terms of cameras for phones, just because it's not something that's of primary importance to me, and a lot of the reason is for cost.
Rob?
My phone is my camera. I don't have a better camera. That is my best camera. So every year Apple upgrades their camera in the phone, they've upgraded my camera because it is my camera. So I look at it, I hope the next phone has a better camera and they upgrade it more than where it was, because that means I get better pictures. I think it was maybe the 3GS or the 4 when I stopped using my little point and shoot camera. And I've been, my iPhone since at least the 4 has been my primary camera. So.
And I'm a little more along your lines. I have a Micro Four Thirds, but I never use it. I mean, in fact, I'm embarrassed at how little I do use it, and I'm ready to sell it because the iPhone is always with me. The pictures are great. Could they be better? Sure. But there are plenty of apps out there, and if you are shooting raw and tweaking them and take the time to tweak them, you can get some really amazing results. And we've all heard the stories about how the professional photographers are using the iPhone more and more. But so I want a better camera. I just don't know exactly what that means anymore. I mean, I don't know how they solve the zoom problem, short of putting the multiple lenses in the multiple cameras that they already have. So you have two strengths.
I don't know if I buy the 3-camera rumor. That's been the one that's been thrown around a lot, that this year's top-end phone was going to have 3 cameras and be able to go to 10x on non-digital zoom. We'll see. I think that's a really out there rumor. Back to earlier in the show, we were talking about people throw the rumors out there so high that people are disappointed when it doesn't happen. Yeah.
And there's some very viable third-party lenses if you want to carry something else around. And, that's a whole nother discussion too of, as to what kind of add-ons. But I feel like the camera is a big feature. It's an important feature to folks, new parents or grandparents or whatever, especially for the kids, but just in general, because Rob, I'm with you. The iPhone has become my camera.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say that despite that, I mean, I'm not judging a phone primarily based on a camera and saying I'd be disappointed if there wasn't some incremental or even a substantial upgrade in the camera. But the iPhone is my primary camera, not our family's primary camera. But when I'm going to take a picture, I'm going to pick up the iPhone. I have a point and shoot somewhere in my house that I haven't used since, I think, the 4S. I remember it was either the 4S or the 5S. I remember that's when I noticed that not only was I using my iPhone a lot for the camera, but that it was doing things that I wasn't able to do with my point and shoot, especially in terms of low light, because at that point, I think it must have been the 5S camera, just really was good at getting low light situations. I mean, I'm not talking about artistic photography. I'm just talking about a situation where you have a little less light than is ideal and you don't have the option to correct it other than choose a flash or not to choose a flash. And I remember that at that point being really impressed. And you're right, the zoom is an issue. I was taking photos this morning and I was calculating, how far forward should I go in this room, photographing a candidate's forum so that I can actually get the shot I need without having to zoom in a lot, because I know that once I get that picture back and blow it up on my big screen, I'm going to be really unhappy that I zoomed. And that is the kind of solution that, were I taking more pictures, I'd be happy to acquire a third-party lens, because that would be a logical thing to do. If you're using your camera professionally, if you're using your camera to produce pictures that you want other people to see that aren't your family, it seems perfectly reasonable to just, to get a lens rather than adding that feature onto a phone and making somebody who isn't necessarily a full-time photographer or even a serious photographer have to make the choice of whether to buy the phone with the super good camera or to buy the low-end phone that may not have other features that they want. And that's just my perspective. I'm not saying I'm right about that for everyone, but it's just my own personal shopping preferences,
Well, I think we had almost 4 sort of different. Rob and I probably were closest, but we had sort of 4 different perspectives on just the camera here. So it goes to show you that there is no one answer. unfortunately.
And we haven't even talked about video yet, which is obviously something of huge importance to a lot of people. And you know, I think that part of this is that whatever Apple does in the camera itself, whatever changes Apple makes in the phone to the camera, it's incumbent upon Apple to expose those features in meaningful ways that are sensible enough that the average consumer can expose them or can use them without too many problems. You know, the danger they always run, or the danger every technology maker runs, is building technology into their devices that's either too obscure or too mundane for people to pay any attention to. So, you know, Apple has to, and always does very well, straddle that line between putting new tech in and making it fun and sparking the imagination of people to use it. But, you know, it's not just a question of recording videos of your kids blowing bubbles, you know, at a birthday party. It's, you know, podcasters using this stuff. It's videographers using this stuff. There's a big range of professional, prosumer, and consumer uses for video now. That you know, it's not as easy as it was when the feature list was a little bit shorter, I think. So hopefully the Apple can continue to maintain that balance.
Well, you know, that might be where the iPad Pro gets a really good upgrade on the camera, because I see more and more people walking around with these rigs where it's an iPad and a mic, and they're doing the recording on the iPad, the video, and then editing right there. So let's see. It'll be interesting. I'm kind of the belief that this September event's going to be all iPhone related, and there'll be new iPads in October. It'll be interesting if that happens, what kind of improvements the next iPad Pro gets.
Shelly, in what you were talking about in your job, do you do any video, or is it pretty much stills?
I occasionally will do video. I mean, I'm basically illustrating a website for a radio show. So when we do video, I tend to not do it. We have a multimedia team that does that. But what Peter was saying about video was interesting, because it made me think that not only do you have people on a consumer, prosumer, or pro level doing video, frankly, you have people documenting in really in situations that aren't friendly necessarily to video, whether it be somebody documenting political activity or something, a scene around them, or perhaps an incident, a crisis, a disaster, something like that. And what's amazing is when you look at the video that people make under duress and under circumstances of stress, it's actually pretty amazing. Now, if we could just get them to not shoot in portrait, that would be good. But but in general, and some of it is really great quality, and some of it is less quality. But the fact that there's stabilization, and the fact that the basic fundamentals of the camera are as good as they are, means that you've gotten some amazing iPhone videos out there from people who don't necessarily think of themselves as videographers.
Am I the only one that would like to see Apple maybe rotate the camera inside the case so that you could shoot this way but still get landscape?
Yeah.
Yes.
That'd be great.
You're not the only one. I think if you said you didn't want it, you'd be the only one. Yeah.
Yeah, it becomes a little bit harder to get to frame the shot properly, but there should be a way to do something like that, because there
are third-party apps that allow you to do that. There are some third-party apps.
You lose the resolution.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, the problem with idiot-proofing things is that there's always a bigger idiot out there.
Oh, you think you fooled me? Well, let me show you.
Good point, Peter. Good point. So we started off, I think Shelly and Rob both said processor. Do we really need faster iPhones, guys?
Always. Yes.
Always. Okay.
Because they continue to put things in the operating system that stress the processor, and people continue to make apps that want more processor power. So the only time that the answer to do you want a faster iPhone is no, is if it's going to create significant limitations on the battery.
Yeah, I mean, this is the one year where we're really not iOS 12 for all purpose is really iOS 11.5.
Yeah.
But in other years, you always need better processors because you're really moving up into a higher need OS.
That's why iOS.
Yeah. I joke on my show, I call it, I go code name iOS 11.5. That's what iOS 12 is, internally at Apple. But we'll always need the better processor, per Shelly's point, because there's always more they want to do with the OS.
And there's more expectation, I think, from consumers too, that, if I have to wait, 2 seconds instead of 1 second, then this iPhone is a piece of junk and it's taking too long. And let's face it, developers are always going to outpace, the silicon in terms of processor optimization. To Shelly's point, though, I think that performance is one thing, but really thorough optimization to make sure that we're getting the most, not just the most battery life, but the most longevity out of these devices as possible is really important as well. One thing I've noticed is that these things are so compact, yet they're so advanced. If you run like a brand new iPhone, like an iPhone 8 or an iPhone 10 under intense processor load, if you load up something very processor intensive, the device gets very hot, and it of course runs the battery down very quickly. So any kind of optimization that Apple can make, both to the silicon and to the operating system running it, to optimize for that is good. We've been hearing this constant march from Apple for the past couple of years, comparing the processor speed that you find in iPad Pros and in the flagship iPhones to laptops. Well, this thing, benchmarks similar to what you would find on a MacBook Pro, or almost as good as a MacBook Pro, or as fast as a MacBook Pro. Look, that's great. But, try doing multi-channel audio or video work on an iPhone or an iPad Pro, and you run into some limitations really fast. We're not at that point, right, where we can just arbitrarily swap out these devices with the more powerful devices that we've got in our libraries. But we're getting really close, and that's exactly what I think you were talking about a little while ago with the iPad Pro and video. The iPad Pro as a video device has really taken off, and it's because we finally sort of reached that threshold where this is viable for this group of people. Does that mean that that Hollywood directors are going to start making their next big feature films on iPad Pros? Well, no, but there's certainly a market for it. There's certainly a market for iOS devices doing more and more powerful stuff.
So the one other area, your point is well taken, Rob, about the iPad, and Peter's too, about people using the iPhone for video. And so, that begs the question of are these really phones anymore? I mean, that's what we call them, and they certainly have that capability, but they aren't. It seems like increasingly, in an increasing rate, we're using them less for voice communications, more for just about everything else. I mean, it's a joke about millennials, that they don't like to talk on the phone, and yet they're on their phone all the time. So, does that play into this at all, that we just have to keep making these little microcomputers smaller and smaller and the phone device, as we refer to them, more and more powerful to accommodate these needs? Is that where we are?
I mean, if all you want is a phone, you get an Android. Right? People are getting iPhones because they want more than a phone. Or if they don't like Apple, then they get a Galaxy. But really, for the majority of Android phones, people are buying them for voice, email, text. On the iPhones, those are the least use case of the phones. You're buying it for so much more. So I think it is a mini computer that's with you. And we expect more from it every year. I know my listeners do. I do personally. And the power of where we're at now is amazing. I go back and I think about when I started podcasting, it took over an hour to encode my audio from a GarageBand to MP3. It was on a titanium PowerBook. And my iPhone 10 with BossJock would encode from RAW to MP3 in an hour and like 6 minutes. I mean, that's the power we've gone in 15 years.
Yeah.
Well, another way to think of these things in our pockets that, oh, by the way, can make phone calls. And I was going to tell a story about how when I was trying to decide what phone to set up for my mom, I had a plus size phone around here for a while and I set it up for her and I spent a week playing with it and I realized I hadn't made a single phone call on it. But instead, I'll say that I think the way to think about it is not so much the actual act of making phone calls, but the fact that you have that cellular network, which gives you access to everything else. And you may not use your phone very often as a phone, but you're probably not constantly on Wi-Fi if you're on the go at all. And Wi-Fi becomes more available all the time, but we're still using these devices in connection with cellular networks, and we sort of forget that until we have to pay the cellular bill or until we get a data charge or we get throttled or something like that. But fundamentally, these are mini computers who have multiple ways of keeping you connected, the most important of which often is the cellular network.
What I think is interesting about the phenomenon that you're talking about is that more and more, and it's not generational, right? It's not specifically millennial or post-millennials that are doing this. A lot of people aren't replacing PCs or even Macs when they die. They've got everything that they need in their phone, or they've got everything they need in their iPad. Chuck, you and I have talked about my experience working in an Apple retail environment, not for Apple, but for an Apple authorized service provider in the past. And that was 3 years ago. But even then, I would say 40, maybe 50% of our customers would come in and might have a problem with their iPhone that they could fix themselves if they were connected to iTunes. And I would ask them, do you have a PC or a Mac at home? No.
Well, I mean, just take a look. Yeah. The last Apple quarterly conference call, Apple reported, year over year, Mac sales went from 4.3 million to 3.7 million, and the stock went up $25 a share since then. Right? The writing's on the wall. It's obvious. The computer is the very small use case at this point in time.
Yeah, and my vote is still out on whether or not that is a trend or a fad, right? I don't know that we're walking away from computers forever, but I do know that right now the people are getting enough out of their devices that they may have had a computer in the past and may not need one now for whatever reason. So it'll be interesting to see, I think, over maybe 5 or 10 years how that continues. But yeah, there's no question that people just don't need many people don't need computers in their lives for what they're doing. They might have a computer at work, or they might have a computer at school, and that's fine for them. Or they might have a computer at a friend's house that they can use for those occasions where they might need to do something else. But for many of us, having a phone in our pocket or having an iPad or some kind of tablet is more than sufficient.
I think those things are definitely cyclical, and I've been around long enough to see generations of computers go by where one minute it was the fastest processor, the biggest, beefiest amount of RAM, biggest hard drive, and the next it was how thin can we make it? And I'm not even talking about just Apple, just in terms of, and that even happened in the professional world where you had people putting big desktops on people's desks, and then they were saying, you know what we can do? We can give give them X stations and let them just essentially create terminals with a GUI of some kind. And all of that seems very cyclical. And we've been in this. It's interesting that the iPad, if it was not for the iPad, you'd say, well, we're going to the smaller form factor. People are moving away from computers and they can do everything on their phone. But the iPad provides this sort of interesting bridge for people who may not need a computer at all because the iPad is available to them, even if they're not creators. I always think about computers as being more for creators than for consumers. But even if you have an iPad, you can still do a lot of creating on it. And so the cycle is not as black and white as it might have once been, where you either, beefy on the desktop versus small and thin, because that iPad is in the middle. But I'm not prepared to say that the computer is dead, but what we imagine as a computer certainly is going to change. Obviously, Apple is thinking ahead in terms of getting Mac OS and iOS more together. What is that going to look like in the computers or the tablets or the phablets of the next few years? I don't know. But not to acknowledge that it's cyclical is just really short-sighted, it seems to me.
Well, Steve Jobs once said that the computer was the pickup truck, but there's a lot more pickup trucks out there that are being sold. It's more like your heavy-duty Peterbilt. I mean, there are absolute needs for computers, and I don't think they're going away, but the use case is getting harder and harder to justify the difference between it and, say, an iPad with a keyboard.
Yeah, the F-150 is the best-selling car in the United States and has been for many years. There's a big call for pickups. You're right. The pickup truck analogy was flawed, but you're absolutely right, Rob. The point is there is no one tool for everyone that's correct. And fortunately, we've got an ecosystem that supports the ability to use multiple tools. But I will come back to what I say over and over again about this. I have a real hard time getting simple stuff done on my iPhone or an iPad, simple stuff on my Mac done on an iPad or an iPhone. Right? The UIs are different enough, and the user experiences are different enough that it's still a difficult process and maybe it's just muscle memory. Maybe I'm just an old fart Gen Xer who just can't learn the new tricks. But I feel like I can still be more productive and work faster on my Mac doing the things that I need to do than I can on an iOS device. And as long as that's true, I'm definitely going to need a Mac in my life. And I'm probably going to use a Mac in my life for, the 70 or 80% of stuff that I could do on a phone but would prefer not to.
Yeah, on a personal level, I feel the same. I mean, whether I don't feel like it's important to convert anybody. And but for me, sitting in front of a screen that is of a good size and it's in the right position for me, and an operating system that is designed for creating and manipulating things in the way that I do it, I want that to continue. And I'm actually not looking forward to the brave new world where the two operating systems get closer together, because I don't think the advantage of iOS is objectively as an operating system. I think iOS works really well on a phone or on a tablet environment and the touchscreen environment, but I don't think iOS is optimized for the things that I do on my Mac and the ways that I do them. And, don't even get me started about file systems and access to them and that sort of thing. But
okay, guys. So as we wrap this up, two things. I want to comment on what you all have been talking about. Yes, the computer sales are dropping, but sometimes it does make me wonder, if I flip it around, if we finally gotten to the point where we have something other than a computer that does what most people want. That if the computer sales didn't boom when they boomed, because that was literally the only device you had, the only option you had to do those things. And now Apple has the iPhone and the iPad. They're just different devices, but they do it good enough. I'm absolutely with you all on the idea of, I need a full screen, but I'm probably more of a truck driver, maybe even a Peterbilt driver than a lot of folks are. So it is what it is. But one thing that we haven't touched on at all, the concept that these little devices now have so much information about us, and we're carrying it around with us. Any security features we would like to see to be added to the next iPhone, whether they're hardware or maybe even hardware software?
I'd like to see a robust password manager a la 1Password, but simple enough for somebody who is not expert in the maintenance of passwords to use. Because I use 1Password on all my devices and they sync and it works really well. But when I start thinking about applying that to family members, or when I go to my workplace and they say, well, no, you can't use 1Password because we have a password manager that we use here. Period. You have to use that one. Well, that's going to be a problem if I'm trying to connect all my devices. So, and then thirdly, like I say, just the idea that I'm trying to explain to family members, number one, you need to keep good passwords. And number two, here's this piece of software you have to learn in order to do so.
Okay, good. Rob?
I go to my parents' house and they still have their passwords written on sticky notes. But, I think the FBI said it best. They are not happy with all the stuff that Apple's doing, and that makes me happy with what Apple's doing. So as long as the government isn't happy with what Apple's doing on the security front, I think they're doing a good job.
You rebel, you. Peter?
Well, I think iOS 12, screen time is a nice feature. My vote is still out on how well it's going to be used in terms of making people aware of how they themselves are using their devices, as well as the other members of their family, and giving them more insight. But I would like to see that expanded. I think to more practical security considerations. Hey, you're spending this much time using these social media apps. Do you actually know what data you're giving to these things? If Apple can figure out some way to make that appetizing for consumers, I think it could be a very, very powerful framework going forward. I think that we need to be a lot more mindful of not just how the devices, but also the software on the devices are using our personal information. So I'm happy to see things like screen time pop up, because those are tools that expose that information and enable us to be mindful of how we're using these devices. And I hope that actually affects behavior. The problem is that for every tool like screen time that a company like Apple might develop, they're fighting against literally millions of developers who are trying to create little dopamine feedback loops in people's heads to make them come back and use the app over and over again. And look, I reviewed Heyday for iMore in 2015. I'm still playing that damn game on my iPhone. Why? Because it gives me pleasure. Because the stupid Farmville, grow wheat, harvest it, turn it into biscuits, and sell it to my town visitors is fun for me, and it's easy to do. My point in all this is that whether it's Facebook or Twitter or Farmville or a million different games and a million different apps for the iPhone. Make no mistake, a lot of the developers who are creating these things are trying very specifically to make them addictive for you, and to get you to share your information, and to get you to buy into the ecosystem. Who develops an app anymore? Everybody develops platforms. Twitter is a platform. Facebook is a platform. iOS is a platform. macOS is a platform. Why does everybody's damn app need to be a platform? That's what I want to know.
There's the Peter I know and love. Guys, this has been interesting, and I have to say that I'm not sure that there's much agreement between all of us. And I don't mean that they're bad disagreements, just, we all have different focuses. And, gee, if you were sitting at Apple listening to this, like, what feature do we focus on next?
I'm sure they're waiting for us to tell them.
Well, I think that's why we're going to see 4 new iPhones at the event, the SE2 and the 9 and the 10S and the 10S Plus. I think we're going to see 4 iPhones. You're going to see a wide price range. I think you're going to see a lot of features on the top end and not as many new features on the lower end. And I think you can see a lot of people happy with that. And that's what Apple's trying to do is appease a lot of people by giving multiple choices.
Good point. Guys, I want to make sure that folks know where to find you when you're not here talking iPhone and serving on the MacJury. So we'll go around the table and feel free to plug any projects, social media presences, websites, political campaign. No, forget the political campaigns. We'll stay away from that. Shelly, get us started.
So if you want to argue with me on Twitter, you can follow me at Shelly, Shelly. Also check out my podcast on Relay FM called Parallel. That's Relay FM/Parallel and Relay.FM/Parallel. And finally, the iOS 12 edition of my book, iOS Access for All, will be coming out sometime this fall.
Great. Come back and tell us about it.
I will.
And great. The invitation's open. Rob, how about you?
You can find me at todayinios.com for Today in iOS. You can find me on Twitter, which I hardly ever actually do, at podcast411. And if you have any questions on podcasting, you can find me at Libsyn, Rob at Libsyn.com.
Excellent. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Peter, when you're not turning wheat into biscuits for your town visitors.
You can find me at peter-cohen, Cohen.com. I'm on Twitter at Flarg, Flargh. You're welcome to go and yell at me and argue with me there because I'm never on Twitter anymore. So.
Oh, the cool kids aren't on Twitter anymore. Now I feel bad.
It's all about Mastodon.social, baby. No, just kidding.
I know. I got one of those last week, but I haven't done anything with it.
Yeah, or micro.blog, which is
same.
one of the things I'm having fun with. So,
the flavor of the week.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Well, guys, thanks again. Really appreciate the time and the insights. There are quite a few of them flying around here.
Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you for having us.
Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices. This is what we do, and we hope you enjoy it. And if you do, let me know at chuck@macvoices.com. And if you don't, let me know at chuck@macvoices.com. Let me know what you'd like to see and who you'd like to hear from, because the door is always open, and I love talking to these really intelligent people about really important things like this. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit macvoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our MacVoices Facebook group, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us at patreon.com/MacVoices and join these folks who help keep MacVoices coming to you. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.